few Senior X before, so you know the basic routine. We have this is a 20-minute session, and in about 15 minutes, I'll signal you just that you know that we're at that point, but I'm sure you'll be paying attention to that too.
Yeah.
If we get to 20 minutes and we're still talking, I'll probably give you a cue to start wrapping up. And then how we'll proceed after that is that we'll have, we'll take questions from first the panelists to see if they have any questions, then we'll open it up to the general group of observers. And then after that point, what we'll do is we'll ask everyone involved, including Drew, to step outside. The panel will discuss the presentation, and we'll make that as quick as we can, and we'll bring Drew in, or anyone Drew would like to bring back in with him. With him, maybe just Drew. All right, so I would ask at this point, if you have a cell phone, please turn it off. Just go ahead and turn it right off, because we don't want any of those going off in the middle of the presentation and such. Okay? So, that being said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Drew, and here we go.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you guys for coming. My name is Drew Rich, and I did solar panels at MDIHS. Throughout my journey, I decided that my central question was going to be, what has attempting to install solar panels at the high school taught me about the realities of making change? So before I start, I really want to look back at some of the research I did throughout the project. And I really love this quote, and it's that the quote is, look at things not as they are, but as they can be. Visualization adds value to everything. A big thinker always visualizes what can be done in the future, and he isn't stuck in the present. I'll reflect on that a little bit later, but I just want to bring that up to get you thinking. So when it came to picking a project, I had a definite idea coming into class. I really wanted to do something with self-sufficiency because of my interest, and I thought that I really wanted to do something big. So it originally began with Acadia National Park. I really wanted to set a national standard for something that a park could do, so that it could be recognized, and then maybe even set a precedent for going forward. But I needed to scale down. I knew that I wasn't going to do the entire park. That was a little bit ridiculous. So I decided to try a pioneer project on a small park building and work towards self-sufficiency with two different setups. The first being wastewater remediation, and the second being solar panels. So I didn't really just have a dream when this came to me. This sort of came after a college visit. We were visiting UVM with my family, and we visited the Rubenstein School of Environmental Studies. Now this school is this building is just amazing. It has so many different things to offer. It has a rooftop garden. It has basically what they are is they're windows that shade the light depending on the temperature. They have solar panels that help power the building, and they contain what was known as an eco-machine. An eco-machine is basically a vat. These are right here. These are the eco-machines, and they're basically a vat of microorganisms that are suspended within water, and then plants that are planted on top that have roots coming down. And they effectively filter out the waste that is run through, and then they are allowed to, they basically, by creating, using the waste, they send, they use that for growth and production and energy, and then they send clean water, and they're able to redistribute it throughout the building. So that was really cool to me, but as the school year began, I had to rethink things. I had to really think that I want to have to travel from MDI to the park, to another building, to here to there, and I didn't really want to have to deal with regulations. So I started to rethink things. Maybe I should shift more towards MDI. So when the school finally started, I decided that my final project idea was going to be solar panels at the high school. So I decided to go to the high school just because what I thought it was going to be a lot of work dealing with laws and regulations, and also the thing about a national park is that they're very conservative and they don't want anything cut down. And I realized that solar panels take up a lot of space, as you're going to see later. So I decided that I was going to do the solar panels at high school. Originally, my plan had that I was going to have them on the roof because the roof has so much potential for solar energy, and it's also just a big wasted space because it's flat and there's nothing up there. What else are you going to do with it? And also original idea came with trying to get the money from funding as well as through the school budget. So this is where my project began. Oh, well, I have to talk about prior knowledge first. For all of you that are visual learners, I thought this was going to be a pretty well done thing. So if this represented my knowledge, this is about how much I knew. I knew just about that A, solar panels made energy, and B, you had to get them. There's a lot more than that. So I decided to change this slide to prior skills. I've had a lot of experience with verbal communication. Throughout my time at the high school, I've done 3 dances, and because of that, I've had to make a lot of phone calls and really just trying to locate supplies. So I've had to call a lot of different companies and really order stuff, and that was a big thing for me. Like I said, I've had experience with big projects, the dances. Each one has raised around $2,000, and around 200 people came to each. So that was a huge benefit for me. And I also had a lot of experience with public speaking because, as most of you know, I MC at the prep rallies, which is what this picture shows right here. The next thing I want to touch on is my mentor, Andy. She's a professor at the COA, and she has connections throughout the renewable industry, which would make it perfect for me to get hands-on experience. And also, she's done a lot of projects throughout this industry. One of the projects she did was at Bar Harbor. It was the solar array in Bar Harbor. And she had hands-on experience with multiple projects. So that was one of my things I was leaning towards. And it also had an added benefit of my mom's. She was my mom's friend, so I was easily able to connect with her. So that's where I began. My project started off with our first meeting, which was on the 23rd, 2016. And throughout this meeting, I learned so much about it. The first thing that we really talked about were PPAs. What PPAs are, because this is an essential part to understanding my project, is they are basically when a third-party company buys solar panels, and then as a result, they buy them because the school can't take advantage of the tax benefits that come with it. So they buy the solar panels, and then over time, you will pay them back. She also introduced me to 2 companies that would be very useful, and they also did PPAs, which was Revisions Energy and MDI CEP, which is MDI Clean Energy Partner. We also talked about capacity factors, which were huge. This came in with a lot of calculations, really how much energy we were going to produce with how many panels each one produced, kilowatt. And the next thing that we talked about was the bills and what to look for throughout. So because there's 28 meter numbers, and they each have a different rate and a charge rate, the bill was really essential, and I needed that for PPA. So that's really what we talked about. Another thing she did was she introduced me to Amera. Amera, if nobody knows, is basically the energy company that I'm assuming most of our island gets energy from. And this is also the energy provider that the school uses. Throughout this, I called them actually the day after this, and we really talked, and they could explain a lot to me about the energy supply and what different rates were. So if you use more than a certain amount in a quick period of time, there's a different charging rate. So there's a lot of things that go into this, and that was really essential to this project. The next thing that happened was I emailed Revisions Energy. On the 27th, I got an email back, and they needed 2 things from me. The first thing they needed was a satellite image of the school. This was really a necessary thing because in order to have the PPA and for them to set up the plans, they needed to find out what we had to work with. What was the area of space that we had that they could possibly develop into a place that we could produce a massive amount of energy. The second thing that we needed was the yearly school usage for electricity, and we also needed a monthly bill. The reason, like I said, we needed the monthly bill is because each one has a meter number. Throughout the school, I believe we have 5 meters. So each one varies a little bit, but they have enough information throughout that one bill in order to really work with that and get me what I needed to do, get them where they needed to go in the PPA. Meanwhile, while this was happening, I did a lot of research, and I found out about the Board of Trustees. So throughout this time, I did cost analysis, which is a huge thing. How much is everything going to cost? How long will it take to pay this back? What are the benefits? What are the cons? All sorts of stuff. I also looked at solar panel type. We looked at 3, but this was a pretty simple thing because it was a definite answer. And I also did calculations for the school. Now this has a funny story behind it. While I was doing the calculations for the school, I went to multiple different sites, compared them, and I looked at different percentages of the school's usage. So for the full electricity usage, if we were going to cover everything, which is 100% of our usage at MDI, it was going to cost around $1.6 million. Surprised. I was very surprised when Mr. Haney said no. I didn't understand. But we actually did look at that. We also looked at multiple different size projects. So we looked at anywhere from a 5 kilowatt project was going to cost around $2,000 to $4,000 to that 1.6 million, which was immediately ruled out because who has 1.6 million? I also learned how solar works and how everything goes. I also looked at the laws and regulations, like the tax benefits, and how many benefits you get through laws and regulations. And another thing I did was a lot of research on the PPAs, like I talked about earlier. So Friday, September 30th, I finally received the information that I needed for the PPA. This right here is the actual bill. This has the meter number, and it has whatever we used for that meter. And this was, again, one of the things they needed. And then the second thing, which was actually one of my big surprises, is we received the total amount of usage. So one of the things that actually shocked me and pushed me forward in this project was during the year 2015, we used $101,000 worth of electricity. That's a lot. That's around $8,478 per month, which totals out to about 555,000 kilowatt hours. If, to put this in perspective, the average household uses around 5,000 to 6,000 in Maine, so that's a ridiculous amount. We also looked at how much space we were going to need, so I calculated, just because of what they gave me from the PPA and the solar arrangement, that I was going to need around 47,000 square feet, which we have plenty of that, plenty more than that on the school roof. So this was where my first minor hiccup came, of many. So when I sent this in, I didn't realize that I needed the account number in order to process the PPA. So during the process, while processing was happening, it got kicked back. So I had to find this account number, which really used up a valuable resource that I needed, which was time. I did not have time on my side, so this really hurt me. But I finally got the results back October 26th, and the results were unsuccessful. So this is really kind of one of the lower points in my project. I was kind of upset, but I had to realize that it needed to be pushed through. The reason was that ballasting is the process in which they use to set up the solar panels, where they take a big metal tray and add a bunch of weight onto it so the solar panels don't blow off the roof. Caused a lot of structural problems. So in order to fix that, we would have to add supports and add weight, like things that would counteract the weight, and it made it an unfavorable investment for roofs. But I did soon after find a second PPA, which was with a plot of land that I found on the high school grounds. It was over by Mr. Munger's room, if anybody knows what that is. So it was over there where they sort of throw a bunch of trash. So while this was happening, while I was waiting for the second PPA, I finally met with the Board of Trustees. This was a kind of huge thing. Basically what it is a group of people from each different school and representatives, and they're really in charge with all the development and stuff like that, and the infrastructure. So what I did was I explained my project, we went over everything that we need to go over, and then I presented them with two different ideas. And throughout that, we decided that we wanted to pursue each of them instead of just one. The first idea was finding a donor and a structural engineer to do an engineering. It was basically to see how much weight the roof could sustain, and then we were going to try ballasting. The second thing that we decided to come up with is try to use the land I had found with the PPA. And this one, for me, was a lot more exciting, because this was something new that I knew that could have a possibility. So I finally got a reply back, and this is basically what they had proposed. So as you can see right here, this is the dimensions, and each one of these is a different row of solar panels. In between each, you need around 20 feet. So each one of these little spaces is 20 feet, and that's how that works. So this array, particular one, was going to be around 624 panels, which is 209,000 kilowatt hours. So that's roughly around 40% of the total energy usage. But it didn't really get much farther because I hit another roadblock. All of this area that's encompassed in green is actually marshland. And for those of you who don't know, marshland is extremely protected. And even if I could get the permits to develop this area, it wouldn't really, the benefits would not outweigh what's happening, because I would have to destroy basically an entire ecosystem, and that's really not what I'm about. So since then, I've talked to a few different people. The first one was Gary Friedman. He's the co-founder of Climate Thrive, and we talked about a bunch of things. He complimented me on how much I'd done so far, because this is really the farthest anybody's ever gone with this project. But he did bring up an idea that I really like, and it was the solar canopy. Basically what a solar canopy is as you can see, it's a basic structure that hangs over a parking lot, which is really wasted space. And it converts energy. So instead of wasting all that space with a parking lot, you can make it a two-way thing. You can convert energy, and you can also have a place to park. So I really like this, but unfortunately this is the most expensive idea. So that was going to be one of the hard things to overcome with this. I also applied for a third PPA with Solar City. They're a company based out of California. And I also got declined very quickly. Reason being, California has I think 17 cents per kilowatt hour, which is opposed to 4 cents in Maine. And to make that a little bit more realistic, we would have to pay around $400,000 worth of energy per year if we were in California. So with that being shut down, I contacted Angus King and I talked to one of his aides in search for donors, but the problem with that is because he's a political figure, he would have to get involved, and sometimes getting tangled up in things like that can get kind of risky when you're a political figure, just because of all the things that need to happen. So my next steps, I intend to continue with the solar canopy, and I really intend to continue meeting with my mentor. We may have found a possible donor. It's still up in the air right now. There's been talk, I'm not really sure. But I do believe that this is something that needs to be done. I also have talked to my mentor. She's found a budget for a solar canopy. So basically what happened is we covered at least some of this. I don't know how big the project will be, but we cover some of this parking lot with solar panels. So thinking back, if you guys remember, I brought this quote up at the beginning of this slide. And one of the big things that I realized during this project is that we have a lot of people that look into the present. We have a lot of people that say, wow, what we have now, why change it? There's nothing wrong with it. And that's the problem. We need to have more people that can visualize into the future and see things that are happening. Which brings me to my learning. The first thing I learned was change is hard. Throughout this project, I tried to work together with many people. I went through many processes, and each one ended in failure. Now, it's not because people don't want to. It's just because it's easier to stay the way it is, and a lot of that has to do with money. You see these projects, and they're like $400,000, and if you can't see past the original investment, and you can't see past those 16 years when you finally earn the money back, it's going to be very difficult to invest that money. The second thing I learned is change is necessary. Throughout this process, like I said, I did a lot of research. One of the things that I researched was the energy usage at the high school. 555,000 kilowatt hours per year and $100,000. That's absolutely insane. And if those numbers don't say, wow, we need to change something, then I'm not sure what will. And then the final thing I learned is change is possible. Change can happen, but only if you're willing to work for it and visualize and see in the future. And this is where I'm at right now. Throughout my process, this was one of the hardest parts, and I had to really work through that because at the beginning, I sort of came in here thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. Actually, in my project proposal, I wrote down 4 steps for what I was going to do. I was going to talk to Mr. Haney. I was going to go to the Board of Trustees. I was going to get funding, and I was going to buy the solar panel and put them up. Didn't work like that. So I realized about halfway through my project, this isn't going to come easy. It's going to come through hard work and a lot of visualization. Because a lot of people can't visualize, so sometimes you have to show them. And then I really want to end with this quote, that there are those that look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why. That's what Robert, I think. With that being said, I'd like to thank a bunch of people. I'd like to thank my mentor, Anna. Thank you so much. Even when I didn't respond right as I should have, you still stuck with me and you didn't give up on me, so I really want to thank you for that. I want to thank people at Revisions Energy for being so patient, and also same with that. I want to thank people at Solar City and MBICEP. They also helped me a lot throughout the process. Senator King and his aides, they also helped me, even though they didn't give me much. They promised me that they would relate some donors to me so that I could try and talk to them and see if they could work it out. I'd like to thank John Luft and Mondrian, who work at Revisions Energy, who really were the ones that were dealing with me throughout my constant mistakes. I'd like to thank Mr. P for constantly pushing me, and he was also he had a huge interest in the project. My mom for always being there and supporting me. I can't tell you how many times I came home and was like, wow, this isn't going to work, and she just sort of pushed me through that. I'd like to thank Mr. Haney for constantly, dealing with me, because I had to go and bug him about 4 times a week. When's that meeting? When's that meeting? When's that meeting? The Board of Trustees for hearing me out. Gary Friedman for really suggesting all of these ideas. And Debbie Clark for, again, dealing with me as I was trying to find the information and learning all of this new information. And also, I'd like to thank everybody else who helped me through the project. Because really, without people saying, hey, how's your project going? I don't know if I could have continued on. And that is my direct.
Okay, so I'd like to start first with the panelists, and if you have any questions for Drew, and then once we're done with that, we'll open it up to the larger audience.
question.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about why self-sufficiency is so important to you.
I've always actually really liked the idea of self-sufficiency. I mean, although it's, I guess, a controversial topic, I do believe that global warming is happening. And one of the big things that I feel we need to do is we need to move towards renewable energy. The constant burning of natural gases and oil and all of this stuff is really not helping us in that case. So I feel that the more we can push towards these renewable energies and really one of my big ideas was setting a standard for the Highland. I mean, if somebody looks at MDI and says, wow, they've got like a ton of solar panels, why not me? If we can start a change and then it can slowly spread, that's one of the big things. Because I found out also that change is contagious. If you see one person doing it, you're going to be like, why not me?
I have two questions. One is, did you have a different essential question in mind when you started at the beginning of the project?
Well, I actually did have an essential question.
Okay. Which
I
is fair.
I was
That's
kind
fine.
of planning on doing that as the process went on and seeing what went wrong. But I did actually change my essential question just yesterday. What I originally, it had to do with my ideals and how I was going to put that together. So basically what the essential question was, how has installing solar panels at the high school taught me about following through with my ideas in the real world? So how is it going to show me? How is it going to really work together?
Nice discussion. The second question is, and this is just general, and maybe I missed this, but I didn't think I did, not that I was looking for it actively. Did you consider other sources like geothermal or wind, or I'm just curious if those ever entered into your thoughts?
Well, originally I was really stuck on the solar panels because I was like, I'm kind of a bullheaded person. I'm like one way to go. One of the big things I saw was like, wow, look at all this potential. We have a giant roof, and I've heard whispers of it throughout the community, like saying, you tried it before, but it didn't happen. So it was also sort of a pride thing. I was like, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So that was one thing, and I've heard a few things about solar, wind, and if really in the grand scheme of things, if this doesn't work out, wind would probably be the next best alternative because it doesn't require a lot of space. So the problem with wind is that it can affect ecosystems because of the bird migration and all of that stuff. But if we were going to do anything, I'd assume it'd be wind, which would be one of my suggestions towards the future. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Do you see this project impacting any major choosing college or career?